Sharon, I don't want to break up the rhythm of our previous conversations, but I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been too long, and I know that everybody's going to be excited to hear from you. So today we had obviously planned to talk about traditions and rituals and everything that we kind of enjoy about this time of year. Take me right back to, okay, this is going to be a psychoanalytical start to the to the show. Take me right back to your childhood. You know, what were the traditions that you grew up in, the rituals, and I don't know, how do you feel that things have changed over time, I guess?
Let me think. Okay, I grew up in a secular, skeptical Jewish household in Los Angeles. And so our traditions, they were more like intellectual traditions than um, uh, I don't know, Christmas cookies, or I don't even know what to contrast it to.
Mm.
Um, I felt that I was in the wider culture, but not of it. And but of course, what you grow up in is water to the fish, right? I mean, you don't, you just, everything is normalized to you because it's the only thing you know. I grew up in what was a very interesting neighborhood, which, of course, at the time I didn't know was interesting. And who our neighbors were overwhelmingly first and second generation people from Japan.
Mm.
And many of those families had the parents of the families had been interned in detention camps during World War II. The one of the greatest crimes of America. And they were still, even though they had been imprisoned as or rounded up as children, they still had a very cautious and kind of outsider looking in perspective. And these were my best friends. And so many of the traditions I experienced were actually Japanese
Mm.
traditions. And I loved being in these homes because there was what seemed to me as a child, a kind of quiet serenity and very ritualistic. There was tea ceremony and um, I don't know. There was just this simple elegance to everything, and so that deeply influenced me.
Mm.
And it was such a contrast to the family that I grew up in, which was really verbal and everything was polemical, and I'm grateful for that. But it was really nice having these kind of islands of serenity. And then the other people in our neighborhood, it was a very closely knit neighborhood. We were the only white people. Even we were Jewish, so we weren't. Uh, I don't know, regular white. What I don't know. Um, but we actually, you know what? I'm misrepresenting. Well, I was going to say we also had Indian Americans on our block and African Americans. And so it was very rich culture, lots of different traditions.
Mm.
Um, what I was going to say is the one white family was across the street from us, and they were, do you know the now pretty well known actress Jodie Foster? I don't,
Yes.
yes. Okay, so the Foster family grew up across the street from us. And why this is important in terms of culture is the other whiter culture that I grew up in, again, unknowingly, water to the fish, was the entertainment business.
Mm.
Everybody, everybody worked in some aspect of the entertainment business. My father was a lawyer in the entertainment business. We had many musicians on the block who played, for the soundtracks of movies.
Mm.
Everything serviced the entertainment business. And so I just assumed, growing up that everyone, that everything was kind of about television or performance or taco commercials. There used to be commercials actually filmed in my parents' house. I thought of tacos because there was a Taco Bell commercial filmed in our, it was weird and it was rich. But I know I've gotten far afield from your question. I married, and so I grew up in this kind of cosmopolitan neighborhood, and then the man I married came from a very insular, provincial, uniformly Irish Catholic Chicago neighborhood. And, we couldn't be more different in terms of our traditions and our consequent ways of thinking
Mm.
about the world, whereas in my family, everything was stand up, shout it out, say what you got to say. And in his family, it was be quiet, be humble, blend in, etc. And so, anyway, I had a really interesting experience 2 nights ago talking about the meeting of cultures. For the very first time, and I kid you not, in the very first time in my life, I decorated a Christmas tree
Wow.
with my husband. And the thing, it was amazing because, and this is, I hope this is valuable now as a topic for you and for our listeners. I think the beauty of our traditions and cultures is that whether we think about it or not, they help point us towards the sublime, towards
Mm.
wonder, towards that which we can't really put in words. And they give us, they help us feel like we belong to the world. Our little tribes and stuff can be criticized for kind of promoting us and themness. But on the other hand, it's so important, I think, for us to feel in this vast, chaotic world like we have a place in the web. And how this relates to my decorating this Christmas tree is, I was seeing this with innocent, childlike eyes. I didn't even know you plug in the light. I knew nothing. And we did it and put the little balls on and everything. And when I stood back to look at it, and on the, in a earlier life, I would have thought, oh, that kitschy stuff. I was completely overcome by, it was just so majestic. It was so beautiful. And it pointed to something that my chatterbox mind couldn't reduce to, its tidy categories. So anyway, I guess I took a pretty meandering approach to
No, I
your.
love it. No, I think that's beautiful, and I think it's dead on as well. Sometimes we can't necessarily. Well, I mean, listen, looking at the weird traditions that we do, the weird rituals that we do, even the Christmas tree, it's a very weird thing. I mean, and obviously over the many years that we build these traditions, we're going to lose sight of maybe what the original purpose or meaning of it was. But we still experience that. I think that's what you're speaking to, is that there's still something there that speaks to us aiming higher and being better together. And yeah, it's like it's like the one message that they always push in, all of those Hallmark Christmas movies, which I'm glad to say I've been watching a couple with my wife. It's been hilarious because they're so bad. They're the worst movies you could ever hope to see, but they're so funny and good because of that. And the big message in all of them is Christmas spirit. Have you got the Christmas spirit, or are you just, kind of getting through your life? And, it's just such a funny, I can't believe they do like 30 or 40 movies a year. It's insane. But I love it. I think that it's just so cool that you have finally had that chance to do a Christmas tree and
Yes.
to get that benefit. It's funny.
It's a
I've actually, sorry, go on.
No, no, please.
Well, I was just going to say, I've been thinking about the Christmas tree lately, because obviously, we do that in our family as well, because I come from a pretty standard, well, a Mormon family, but pretty much standard Christmas way to celebrate, sorry, Christian way to celebrate Christmas. And then, my wife comes from Texas and her family did Christmas. And so I'm just surrounded by Christmas. My family, their whole company, that my parents run is all based around Christmas. So it's like you can't get away from it in our family, and we love it. But there is a really beautiful joy that comes in this time of year, just when the people in the family who usually put in the effort to like decorate things, like they that it's like everywhere you go in our family, it's like decorated and there's Christmas and there's just a different feeling. Everybody's happy, having a good time. Not that that's not usually the case, but there's just that different joyful feeling. And it does encourage us to all come together and be better and spend that really quality time just sitting there eating some fruit, watching a Hallmark movie. Like just
Yeah.
doing simple things that usually, I might be like, oh, I'm just busy, or I'm this, or I'm that. No, just do the simple things that, lead us to all come together. But so how do you feel like, have you kept a lot of those kind of multicultural traditions as you've kind of gotten older? Have you brought anything with you from your childhood in terms of those like Japanese traditions and stuff like that? And I also want to know what it was like for Christmas in the or Hanukkah in the Foster family.
They they went to town. Well, mind you, this was before they all became famous.
Mm.
This was when, you know, Jody was getting her first gig in a suntan oil commercial. But anyway, I shouldn't get into celebrity. Um, Sorry, Simon, what was the question?
It's all right. Ultimately, I wanted to know about the Fosters. No, I'm just kidding.
Of
But no,
course.
no, no, no.
Oh,
But
I carry traditions.
yeah.
Yes. Well, I should. Okay, I should say that, I had a ton of children. I had four children of my own who are now grown up, and a couple of them are married, and I've got grandchildren. And I also raised, from when they were very young, two stepchildren. So I had six kids running around, and I would put on these blowout Hanukkah things where we would eat potato pancakes and we would dance and we would play very musical, very
Mm.
musical. Um, and but then, when my kids grew up and grew away, I I took a breather. It's a lot of effort to pull all these things together. One of the things that was great about it was, the traditions in a way we don't have to think so much because it's like you're handed a template
Mm,
for, you know, do this and it'll create joy, and do that and create joy. And everyone's preconditioned to it's time to feel joy. So, um, so much for that. As to the Japanese traditions, uh, my well, my experience with and love for all of these Japanese families whom I grew up with, that's what pointed me towards Zen and
mm,
towards Buddhism as a young woman. And I certainly keep up the tradition of meditation, for
mm,
which I'm eternally grateful. But most of the time, my rituals are kind of generic in a way. I just love to be in nature. Um,
mm.
I guess what I'm saying is I don't ceremonialize anything. Oh, you know what I do do? Oh, for heaven's sakes, it's so much a part of my life that I didn't even think of it. Well, one Jewish practice that I do is every Friday through Saturday, I do observe Shabbat,
Mm,
by which I mean at sundown, I light candles and bless wine, which is a symbol of joy and happiness, and bread. I make homemade bread every Friday. And now it's just my husband and myself. And so we always just have a lovely, very leisurely dinner where we kind of take stock of what we're grateful for, not in any systematic way, but that's the tradition. Just kind of creates a space, to
mm,
do that. And then on Saturdays, we're not strictly observant or anything, but we tend not to drive or to do commerce or anything. We don't work. We usually take hikes or we play music, and it it roots us. It's kind of a reset each each week.
mm.
It's funny I didn't even think about that, because I guess when we really observe traditions, they're so integrated into us that they don't seem like this thing that we practice.
Mm. Yeah.
I don't know. How about you?
No, I love that. And it sounds to me like the Saturday is almost like the day of the Sabbath for Christians, where you kind of just you pause. Like I know when we were growing up, it was always, yeah, the Sunday is the day that you rest, you don't work, you don't go out and buy things, you just kind of have that one day where it's supposed to be different. And I mean, I've even been considering, because I've, obviously having left the church of my kind of upbringing, there are certain holes that ordinary life doesn't necessarily fill, right? And one of those, which
Yes.
I've been considering trying to get back to, is that day of the Sabbath. Even if it's just where you say, well, there's going to be one day a week where I'm going to forgive myself for not constantly thinking about what I need to do next, and for not, just getting engaged in all kinds of things, but just, yeah, maybe that's going to be my hiking day. I'll get up, have breakfast with Jen, go hike, come back and even do some reading, some stuff that ordinarily, I would love to just sit there and not be burdened by thoughts of, well, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, and just a quiet day, So I think that's going to be something that I bring back into the fold, as it were. Um, but I love that. So can you tell me more about the Jewish side of your upbringing and traditions and everything like that? Because I have always had a real affinity for the Jewish traditions, because my brother married a Jewish girl from Philadelphia, so she's got all of those traditions. They had a classic Jewish wedding. I loved it. It was amazing. Um, and it just seems to me like there's a really rich culture there. And I'll also add this. I spent Christmas on the largest cruise ship in the world one year when I was on there with my band, right? And so, we
Oh,
were all on there for Christmas. It was great. I had, my wife Jen on there with us as well. And we were sitting in the dining room one day, and it was just known on the cruise ships that you're going to get a lot of Jewish families coming on the ships around that time of year, because it's kind of like everybody else is celebrating Christmas, so they'll just go off
okay.
and
Yeah,
cruise, right?
yeah.
Um, and we were in the dining room one day, and I looked behind us, and there was this really big family. Everybody was kind of dressed in these white pale clothes, and all of a sudden, the whole family just started singing, kind of quietly under their breath, but still uh, with joy and kind of gusto. They just started singing these beautiful Jewish songs, with their family. And I looked behind, I was like, it's so beautiful. It's so nice to see a family unit sitting down, having a meal together and singing in a public place. They don't care. They're just having a great time with each other. So I've always really appreciated the, I guess, the community and the importance that Jewish families place on those kind of rituals. But for you,
Yes.
what were they? What do they mean? What are the purposes of a lot of the stuff that you did or do?
Well, in some ways, this is restating what you're saying, but um, even in the fairly modern and skeptical household that I grew up in, it was just a given that you would be with extended family. And yeah, lots. I mean, you're actually kind of bringing my awareness back to what I grew up with and what I cherish. And there was always, we grew up singing together.
Yeah.
And, but in some ways, it was for our family a kind of nostalgia for something that we had actually never even experienced. We were singing these sort of tunes of the old country, but none of us had ever been to the old country. And, it was more like something that we imagined.
Mhm.
I mean, maybe that's inbuilt into so many traditions, a sense of nostalgia for something that you really have no direct experience of, but it points you towards certain ideals or a sense of the iconography of your heart or something that
Mm.
maybe you inherited sort of atavistically, even if you didn't directly experience it.
Mm.
Um, Family was everything. Relationship was everything. There was always a stress on, you know, I I'd rather you be a kind person than than the smartest person or the most successful person. Um, we were also, I mean, I'm really just free associating, but these are truthful memories. We were, it was absolutely considered an essential. You weren't alive unless you read books. If you
Mm.
didn't read, you had to read books. You had to read books, and you had to read them not to imbibe them, but to dialogue with them. I
Mm.
think I think that is the spirit that I most take away from my, Jewish culture as I experienced it. Is we were always having a relationship with text and then with ideas, and so I never felt like I had to believe in some top down, authority, this is what God says. I always felt that we were being asked, deeply consider this idea or this chunk of text, and what do you think it really means? What do you think it really means in this
Mm,
moment, in this circumstance that you find it in? Kind of just always turning ideas over and over again. Your turn. What do you think? Your turn. What do you think? There's a concept that they call hevruta, which means literally your friend. But the idea is that you study something with another person. They're dyads, like
mm,
study dyads. And as friends, you bounce ideas off of each other. And so there's no sense of competition. It's like you're trying to sincerely, earnestly figure something out together. That
mm.
was a huge part of my growing up. And I like to think it's still alive for me. A lot of this is reinforced for me. My oldest daughter became a rabbi, and she married a rabbi too. And
Oh,
so
wow.
she has a very observant home. Anyway, I'm losing my thread.
No, I love that, and that whole idea of just being brought up to value the interaction with text. Um, you might be able to confirm this with me. I might be completely wrong on this, but does Israel mean something like they who wrestle with God? Is that,
That's exactly it.
yeah.
Rest, yeah,
And see,
to rest.
that's the sort of images that I come up with in my mind when I hear you being brought up in that kind of culture. It is like, don't accept things, but wrestle with these ideas, right? Like wrestle with that consciousness inside of you, and have that dialogue. It seems to me like such a profound way to grow up and be brought into this kind of culture, right? Because and I can see that has made you who you are, because when we talk about ideas and things that are happening in our lives and everything, it's so much fun to talk about these things with you, because you do wrestle with ideas and you are willing to play, what is it, play gracefully with ideas. Who said that? Somebody said that. It's a
I
beautiful
don't
quote.
know, but that's wonderful.
It was a beautiful quote. It's like, we need to learn to play gracefully with ideas, and I think that's what you do. um but yeah, it's wonderful, these traditions that make us who we are. And I think that we both have a mutual fascination with somebody like Rupert Sheldrake, for example. I really like his theory on these sorts of things, where he discusses the idea that there's almost an inherent memory in these rituals that we do, and the process of generation after generation repeating these rituals over and over and over again. There's some sort of memory carried with them, that even though we can't necessarily explain it, it's just who we are. Just in the same way that if you're born into a Judeo-Christian culture, you're pretty much Judeo-Christian to the core. Like it's just who you
Yes.
are. um, and I like that, because that encourages me to say, oh, okay, well, let's actually try doing some rituals that have been handed down. Um, and I mean, I've even decided that for Christmas, uh, and I did an episode on this as well, I don't think it's necessarily, you don't necessarily have to say think about Jesus Christ, or like I know it's kind of his day, but but for me it seems like an opportunity to think about the sage, because that's what Jesus was essentially to Western culture. It's like the sage of culture, right? But it's an opportunity to think, okay, well, if I could have my best possible self born into my life, and to be able to take that, what would that mean? And then we obviously, a few days later, it's the new year. So you think about the sage, and then you take that with you into the new year, and then wash and repeat. It's like, just repeat the process.
I want to be on your team.
But no, it's just I've just been trying to think about the ways that I can grab onto these cultural, uh, you know, yearly delicacies, and 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 use them in a way that connects me to that broader spirit that is happening right now, but also kind of making it my own. So it's something. But I have to tell you this, Sharon, because you're going to love this story. Okay. So, firstly, when I was young, my parents went all out. Obviously, as I said, they love Christmas. We came out to a fireplace where they had left a scrap of red material as if Santa had accidentally scuffed his pants on the way up the chimney. And they left some red material on the fireplace, ripped up. Those are the sorts of things there's a contrast here, right? Which is that your family had, maybe some very intellectual, traditions around this year. I think for my family, it was kind of like a playful, kind of like, let's keep the spirit alive sort of thing. Um, One year, my brother made a trap for Santa, because I'll tell you exactly what happened, right? He he essentially, underneath the Christmas rug under the Christmas tree, he put a little wire that when Santa stepped on the rug, it would send an alarm into my brother's room and wake him up so that he could come out and catch Santa. He was a psychopath. I love my brother.
What happened? What did he catch him?
No, I couldn't let him do that. I ripped it up. I ruined it. I couldn't let my brother catch Santa. That would have been horrifying. Right, so we had all these silly little things, and we'd have water fights each year. It was for us, Christmas was basically about getting together with the family and just having a fun, silly time. And I think that's kind of the for me. Oh my gosh, yeah. Like, I think that if, in the same way that I can see your traditions, how they have made you who you are, like those traditions have absolutely made me completely silly, and and a big fan of the silliness of life, and those sorts of things, because it's just so much fun. It's good stuff. But yeah, and I have.
Oh, sorry. No,
Sorry,
please.
go.
Well, I was just going to say, I was struck by what you just said, that I think it's true that we really can never escape the traditions we were raised with, just like we can't cast off the influence of the generation we came of age in. And it's funny because I think a lot of us, our vanity makes us want to believe that we truly are independent thinkers, that we've come to live our lives in the way that we do live our lives, as a matter of concerted choice and deliberation, and compare and contrast, and what seems good, what doesn't. But if we look squarely at our values and our behavior, I don't want to be oversimplistic, but I think we are always in dialogue with these formative traditions. Now, some people are spending their life doing everything they can to reject their past for
Mm,
whatever reason, or for those traditions or values that were essential um, in their families of origin. But when you think about that, even living in opposition to those values and practices, you're always tethered to them, because you're having to
mm,
say, not this, not this, not this. I'm a different kind of person. or maybe you're more middle of the road. You're like a modifier of what what you imbibed as kind of mother's milk,
Mm.
or perhaps unthinkingly you just and I don't say that critically. um, it's beautiful to be just one of those people who is an extender of or a carrier of the traditions that
Mm.
they were raised with. So I think that's really terrific that we're always rooted in something, even if somehow deep inside us we're screaming at it. uh, you know,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
Well, I
I,
really like the way that you put it as in dialogue with our traditions, because it's right. It's like, just in the same way that whether you think you have a personal philosophy for how to live your life or not, you do because you're living life, right? In the
yeah,
same way, you know, I know people who Christmas isn't necessarily a fun time of year, but not necessarily for the reasons you might think. I guess there's kind of like a negativity sort of, like, oh, have to be with family. I just don't want to see my family, and oh yeah, don't want to do. And you're right, it's a dialogue. You're still, whether or not you want to detach yourself from that, you're still going through that and having that conversation with yourself about whether it's a pleasant or, and I know it can be a really sad time for a lot of people, this time of year. It can be really, really sad. So, yeah, it's just an interesting point. I like that it is this kind of, man, we can't escape it. Can't escape it wherever you go. Um, I wanted to bounce an idea off you as well, Sharon. Something that I've been considering lately. Um, and I'm going to try and find this passage from Seneca that I read recently, because I thought it was one of the funniest things that I've ever read from a philosopher. And I think you'd really appreciate it. But um, I was I was thinking about the utter commercialization of Christmas that we kind of have reached, or just this time of year. It's absolutely filthy, but I love it. It's like, but it's filthy, right? Black Friday sales. I'm watching from afar over here at a safe distance in Australia, but that's some crazy stuff that happens in America. Uh, but I read this letter from Seneca where it was his letter on benefits, and I want to see if I can find this here, because it was just such it was such a funny thing that I read. But anyway, basically, in this letter, he's discussing, uh, in terms of giving and receiving benefits in society. Even if you don't receive back, you always want to sow because you will reap in the future, but you want to keep on sowing those good vibes, essentially, just like, giving gifts or doing favors or just being that person who's constantly looking for ways to give benefits to other people. Um, and I thought Christmas is almost like an opportunity, as part of my tradition. It's almost like a reminder: give something to somebody. Think about what it is that they might like and give a special gift. And I've been thinking lately, like, uh, I think that slowly over the course of my life, uh, sometimes in my family, and I see this a lot with other people as well, it's like you move away from the tradition of thinking about what am I going to give to this person, and more to the tradition of, hey, what do you want? What do you need? It's more like a, hey, let me ask you what it is that you need, and then I'll get you that. So it takes the surprise element out of it. And I think that we need to move back to, and I'm so bad at this as well, because I'm always just like, don't get me anything I don't need. I'm just, but there needs to be a surprise element to it as well of, how about you think about what it is that I might like, and I'll think about what it is you like, and let's just get together and give a simple gift, a benefit, and practice the art of giving. It seems like that's where we want to get back to. It seems like that's kind of if on a mass scale in society we were able to practice that art at least once a year, maybe it'd be a really good thing for everybody. I don't know. What do you think?
I think you've just said something very important. Um, what it puts me in mind of, I've done a lot of thinking about what actually makes good relationships between people, especially, say, between married people or couples,
Mm.
but even between friends. But let's just narrow it to what makes a good marriage, because so many, it's a cliche to say that, marriage is on the rocks in our
Mm.
time here. But so what I'm about to say is really just a kind of variation on what you're saying. I've come to believe that if I adopt the perspective of thinking about what you, my partner, really most care about, and you adopt the idea of caretaking what I most care about, everything else will take care of itself. Let me give a concrete example.
Mm.
A very prosaic, everyday, banal example. My husband, and I'm not claiming I have some perfect marriage, but it's pretty dang good. When I think of, you know what? It's pretty darn good. Um, my husband loves spectator sports.
Mm.
Loves spectator sports. I could not be more indifferent to spectator sports, and that's putting it generously. Uh, why would someone want to chase a ball or hit a ball around a square? I don't know. I don't mean to sound irreverent, but actually what I've just reflexively done has to do with what I'm trying to say. I would never say something like that around him. I know that that's one of his sacred cows. That's one of his, it makes no sense to me, but I will always go out of my way to try to make sure if there's a big game he wants to see, then I don't schedule something during it or whatever. It's silly, it's mundane, it's every day, but he really cares about that. He also really cares about. He's very sentimental, and so he cares about birthdays and holidays and stuff. I'm not sentimental, but I mean I don't mean to set up this kind of oppositional a lot of times the things that we most care about definitely overlap. But the point is that I've really made an effort to sort of in what you just described, to think about giving to the other person something that will bring them joy and
Mm.
vice versa. And then it's almost like you don't even have to have anything else in common. I don't want to, over exaggerate. But if you feel that, and I used a kind of lame example of just, loving sports. I mean, we also have these, uh, I'm trying to think of examples, but we have certain deeply held principles that if they were breached would just be anathema. I mean, it was just, I wish I could invoke one, but I don't know. I'm not that clear-minded today. But it's like if we protect those things for the other person and they protect ours, and just like you're saying, giving to the other, they give to you. It's it's a beautiful thing. I'm
Mm.
actually, the last thing I'll say about this is I have a friend who passed away a few years ago, and he was an artist, a songwriter, kind of a Renaissance man. But he he wrote this little song with these sweet words that I think say so much, and I'd like to think are a kind of restatement of what you just said. And they go like this. Uh, see, from from you, from you I receive, to you I give, together we share. This is how we live.
Mm.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share. This is how we live. Or you might say, this is how we flourish, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's beautiful. That's a beautiful way to think about it. And yeah, definitely something that's been on my mind, like just this idea of how can we get back to that. It's definitely something that I need to, it's something that I know that I really need to work on, is that ability to uh, pause and reflect on, okay, what's the other person wanting? Like what can I be giving here? And yeah, it's. I wanted to ask you as well. So one of the pictures that you just painted for me is sort of like an archetypal um, uh, marriage unit, which is there are those things that you really get it, I don't get it at all. I get this, you really don't get. And I've been thinking about that for a long time with my own marriage. Is just this idea of opposites attract. and and
You said it.
it's I when I was when I was I've fallen into that idea, because when I was growing up I was like, I'm not going to find the opposite person, I always thought it was such a silly idea. But I think as you mature and as you get to know what actually happens in life, like I know that with my wife and I, like well, getting to traditions, uh, I am not a huge decorator, even though my family is massive on decorations. I'll put up a Christmas tree. I'll be really happy. I'll be really happy with that. But, Jen comes from, I mean, her mum, who is like, who always does a massive Christmas decoration, a huge Christmas tree, just goes all out. And Jen's wonderful like that. She is baking the cookies, she's putting up the Christmas tree, she's putting her Christmas lights, like 2 days into the Christmas tree, the tree's full of presents. It's like, slow down, like, I can't keep up, right? But it's so important, because what that does is it actually pulls me up to a different level as well. It's like, hey, come along with me, we're going to go all out. And there is a spirit around the house now. There is a beautiful feeling in our home, because of the effort that she puts in, where I might not necessarily do that, but maybe the way that I contribute is I'm really happy to do the dishes and stuff like, I'm really happy to do other things, but together it really works well. And I wanted to ask you, I guess, rounding off the tradition conversation, I just wanted to ask you, maybe this will be the final question. What are you looking forward to in 2021? What's the new year looking like for you? What are you excited about, apart from running away from everything that happened this year, which we all are? What's it looking like for you?
I I don't have any concrete outcomes that I'm pointed towards. Uh, I'm not pushing back on the question, but I I feel that if we've learned anything this year, it's that everything can change, and change so profoundly that it almost seems like, you know, the law of gravity has been take subverted.
Hmm.
Um, but what I am looking forward to is the effect that this kind of chastening of our arrogance will result in, as our societies, as the communities we live in learn to reset, because we're not going to go back to the way things were. So much has changed. Even just at the level of, we've gotten so used to communicating through Zoom, for
Mm.
example. Um, yes, we hope that people will get back together in person, but I don't think people are going to altogether uh, ditch this kind of communication. That's one of a zillion examples. But I like to think that as we return or reset or reboot, that we shall do so with more more gratitude, more respect for the mystery of life, and that we won't just be on our uh, kind of mental treadmills. Like, I think I can't speak for other people, but I know that my head was really in the sand before COVID and its effects, and also the political atmosphere in my country, which has been so contentious. I I look forward to how we will incorporate the lessons of simplifying and reappreciating the value of being one and literally together with people, just how that will express itself.
Mm. I love it. I'm going to end the interview right there. That's a beautiful place to stop. But thank you so much for the conversation, Sharon. It's always a pleasure.
Simon, thank you. Pleasure and privilege always.